So, good afternoon and welcome everyone for today's Confucius Institute at Coventry University China Corner that's focusing on Dragon Boat Festival, or in Chinese it is called Duan Wujie, with me, George Hockey. My role at the Confucius Institute, I am officially the COO. I work for Coventry University and I help oversee the day-to-day running of the Confucius Institute. And I like to start with a little explanation of why you have a British white guy talking about and introducing Chinese culture. I did live in China for 11 years. I spent a lot of Dragon Boat festivals there, and I have spent a lot of time working and studying Chinese culture. So a lot of this information about these festivals, these cultural things, it's very interesting for me to look more into them. It's also quite interesting to see them from an outside perspective that many of you will already have. Hopefully my Chinese colleagues will be in the chat to correct me or add things that I would maybe forgetting. And if we have any questions, queries, corrections, further discussions, please let me know in the chat, and I'm very happy to look at this. The focus for this kind of session is as much discussion and to be as interactive as possible. So with that in mind, let's begin. So Dragon Boat Festival. I'd like to start by a little bit of an introduction of the Confucius Institute. Obviously, we are the group that is based in Coventry University. We are a cultural group, and the goal is to share and promote Chinese language and culture across all of the West Midlands. We are one of about 30 institutes in the UK, and we are working currently in partnership with Jiangxi University of Finance and Economics in China to help, who bring us staff, who bring us a lot of our knowledge and support. One of the main things that we do is we run Mandarin classes for people of all levels. That means if you are a complete beginner and are struggling to say hello, count to 3, or whether you are a high-level language learner who is looking to gain the highest qualifications through the HSK, we can help you. We also run workshops, clubs, and classes for local schools, as well as for local businesses and for people across the university group. So if you have any questions, queries, or anything that you'd like to talk with us about, or work with us, or have us come to you, please get in touch with us at the Confucius Institute at coventry.ac.uk. The email address is there on the screen. And if you want to see what we're up to, what we're doing, please follow us on our Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, all of which are at Confucius Cov Uni. So that's my main duty out of the way to make sure that you know where we are. Let's move on. So today's session. Today we are talking about Dragon Boat Festival. So we're going to look at a few areas of this. We're going to look at quite a bit about some of the history and the historical context of Dragon Boat Festival, with a focus of some of the stories behind the festival, as much as the traditions and the ways that people celebrate today. I think that the idea of this is, to try to give some background and some cultural appreciation of why people celebrate Dragon Boat Festival, but also to give some insight into some of the lesser known history of China. Certainly from my background growing up in the UK and from a Western historical context, we learn very little about Chinese history. So it's a good opportunity to look at this and try to gain an understanding of the attitudes, the backgrounds, and some of the ways in which people behaved in Chinese history. So that's basically what we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to start with looking at the lunar calendar. Obviously, we don't use the lunar calendar today. We use the Gregorian calendar in the UK and in the West, and in China. Generally, people will, on a day-to-day basis, will use the Gregorian calendar. However, Dragon Boat Festival and quite a few of the traditional festivals in China are based around the lunar calendar. So we're going to see, what is the lunar calendar? I'm sure many of you will have an idea of the lunar calendar. This is something that when we look at Chinese New Year, that is based on the start of the lunar year. This is where we get the Chinese zodiac of all of these ones on the screen right now. You can see 2021. We are in currently, which year are we in now? Oh dear. I forgot to say, my mind has gone suddenly blank. We're in apparently the year of the cow. That's interesting to see. So what is the lunar calendar? The lunar calendar was a calendar that was created about 4,000 years ago, and it's based on the cycle of the moon. So 1 month is basically the full cycle between a full moon to the next full moon. Now, that is actually slightly shorter than the Gregorian, forgive the spelling error there. So slightly shorter than the Gregorian month. So each lunar month is about 29 or 30 days. So overall, the lunar year is about 354 days long. Now, because this is shorter than the Gregorian calendar, shorter than the years, to keep this in line with the seasons of the year, every 3 years an extra month is added to make up for the lost time, and so that the lunar calendar can generally stay in line with the seasons. So this is why you can see that year by year the Chinese New Year can jump around quite a little bit. And we can also see that Dragon Boat Festival is one of these festivals that will be at a different day every year for our calendar. So the Dragon Boat Festival is actually held on the 5th day of the 5th month in the lunar calendar. So this is an interesting way. So if anyone studying Chinese, we know the number 5, Wu. So Duan Wu is the Duan Wu Jie, or the Dragon Boat Festival. Duan Wu is also, sounds very much like double 5. So people in China can also call this the double 5 festival, as well as what we would call it in the West, a Dragon Boat Festival. So Duan Wu. So that's initial bit of historical context. We're basing a lot on the lunar calendar. Remember, any questions, any comments, please throw them in the chat at any time. So as we've mentioned, we're going to look a little bit of the historical context of China, because that can throw us some of the background to the main stories that are currently shared and the most popular stories and backgrounds of Dragon Boat Festival, which influence the traditions. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is this particular area, or particular time in Chinese history called the Warring States, which is around 260 BC. It's a little bit before that. We have from 221 to 206 is the Qin dynasty, but there is a general area. And as you can see from this map, China was a very different shape, and it was split into many different states. And this is something that has happened throughout Chinese history. It has a very complex internal history with different states rising and falling and taking over, which is where we can get generally what we see is from a lot of the different dynasties. So this leads up to the Qin dynasty, where the Qin group became dominant, as it were. So in the Han dynasty, the Han would have been more dominant, for example. So as we can see, throughout all of Chinese history, for the last 5,000 odd years, there has been a lot of internal fighting across China, with each of these states looking to become dominant, looking to unify China, which we can see is one of the major reasons throughout history that why has China generally not been an expansionist power in the similar way that perhaps the UK, the Romans, Mongolia, and many others were. China was very focused internally, trying to unify themselves. So, as I've said, all of these different states had their own kings, had their own political systems, had sometimes even their own beliefs, stories, cultures, and they were each seeking to remain dominant. Another era that we've already discussed that is similar to this was the Three Kingdoms, which was the last Chinese corner that I did, which you can find online in the address I will put in the chat at the end. So this is an interesting context that throughout Chinese history, these different states have been at each other's throats. There's been huge amounts of conflicts, and this is something that we need to understand from to get an idea of the main story and the most well-known figure for Dragon Boat Festival, who is Chu Yuan. Chu Yuan is the story of Chu Yuan is the most popular. It's across China. This is widely regarded as the background and the story and the reason for Dragon Boat Festival. Although, as ever, academics in different parts of the world and the countries have their own views. And different countries also have their similar festivals, which there is perhaps some crossover. Across China, however, generally Chu Yuan is the central character for Dragon Boat Festival. And we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at him to try to understand why this has reached to why his story has stayed through the last couple of thousand years and why it is so influential today. So, as I've said, Chu Yuan, he was a central figure for the Dragon Boat Festivals, and he was a poet and a politician from Chu. So Chu Yuan from the Chu region and the Chu state. Now, he was mostly regarded as someone who loved his state, who loved his area, and through the stories, he was repeatedly exiled due to corrupt ministers slandering him. Now, before we move on from this, it's worth mentioning that when we look at a figure like Chu Yuan, who has been highly romanticized, there is very much a mixture of legend as well as historical fact. So when we discuss the story of Chu Yuan, it is a story, and this a lot is based on a biography long after the fact by someone called Sima Qian, who there is a single source, a single story about his lifetime. However, this is the story that is told. So, as we've said, he is a poet and politician from Chu, and he was known for his patriotism and love of his when he became the main politician, when he became a minister of Chu, he was a favorite and he was loved by the King Huai. Now, let's see what else I've written there. Now, I'm going to get back to this next bit. When he was working for King Huai, he was initially exiled or sent away from the court due to slander by some of the corrupt ministers who poisoned the king against him. However, he was initially reinstated and was influential in building the relationships between the state of Chu and the state of Qi. If we go back to the map, you will be able to see these are some of the. So Qi there is in the yellow and Chu in the green. So Chu Yuan was basically from Chu, and he was then working to build a relationship with the Qi states. After King Huai died, the next king was called Xingxian, and he was also had a prime minister called Zilan, who was an enemy of Chu Yuan, who they were rivals, I think perhaps is better to say, than enemies. And this led to Chu Yuan being exiled south of the Yangtze River. And according to legend, this led to a lot of of Chu Yuan having a lot of anxiety and a lot of melancholy, and what we would and perhaps generally speaking as being depressed and melancholy. And in fact, there is a particular well in if I can read my writing, Xingni County in Huhai, where he would, according to legend, every day look into the well and feel bad about the himself and be very internal looking about his fall from grace. So in the year 278 BC, Ying, the state of Ying, the state of Qin captured the capital of Chu, which was Yin, and this led to Chu Yuan writing one of his most famous poems, which was called Lament for Ying, and had led to him dying by suicide in the Milor River. So this general story of a character who loved his state, who was very patriotic for his country, tried to do his best for his king, but was betrayed or was out-politicized by ministers, by the prime ministers, and was, through all of this, led to him dying by suicide in a river, so drowning himself in this river. This is put forward as a shining example of the importance of love for one's country, of patriotism, of doing what is or loving one's country. So the reaction to his death is central to a lot of the traditions and ideas of Dragon Boat Festival today. So the local people loved him. He as a figure, as someone who was put on, who was popular, his love of his country was well known. He was very highly regarded. So when he drowned himself in the river, many of the locals rushed to try to retrieve his body in their boats. They paddled out in their boats, and when they could not find his body, they tried to scare the fish away, tried to save his body from being eaten by fish by banging their drums, by splashing their oars, and finally by throwing in rice dumplings. So to encourage the fish to eat the dumplings rather than eating the body. Now, as we see later on in today's session, when we look at some of the traditions for Dragon Boat Festival, you can see many of them beginning here, the racing in boats and the rice dumplings. So this story of Chu Yuan is central to today's appreciation of Dragon Boat Festival in mainland China. However, Chu Yuan was not the only character that is celebrated and focused on with Dragon Boat Festival. In just different areas, in certain areas of China, other people are also celebrated. So in and around Jiangsu, which was where the Wu Kingdom was, a chap called Wu Zishu is also celebrated, and this is related to the Double Fifth Festival as much as the modern understanding of Dragon Boat Festival. So Wu Zishu was the premier of the Wu Kingdom and advised a king called Fu Chai. Now, the rival king of the Yue province, and don't worry about all of the Chinese names. For me, it is very difficult to try to remember the names of these places, the names of the characters, because my Chinese is limited. But you can always go back and find these and rewatch this place. So King Gojin of Yue State sent a girl, a beautiful young woman called Si Shi, to King Fu Chai as a gift. Obviously, that's very problematic today. However, in those days, this was not something that was unheard of. Now, Zi Shu was very suspicious of this gift, as Gojin was a rival, and Zi Shu did not believe that this gift or Si Shi was a reliable gift or was a trustworthy gift. However, the King Fu Chai was enamored by this young girl, and he believed that Zi Shu was trying to poison him against the girl, and gave him a sword and demanded that he commit suicide. And obviously Wu Zishu did so because this would be the honorable thing to do. The interesting detail of this is that Zishu asked that it's rather gruesome detail, so apologies, that he asked that his eyes were taken and placed on the outskirts of the city, so that he would be able to see the Yue kingdom take place, take over. This picture from which movie? Great question, Javad. I'm afraid I'm not sure. I believe it's a television show. If any of my Chinese colleagues are able to help out, please let me know, because as you can see, this is a TV show. I must admit, I found this on Baidu and I thought it was a fantastic one. So I'm not sure what the television show is for. Apologies there. So thank you for the question, though. As I've said, Zishu requested that his eyes be taken from his body and placed on the gates of his city, so that he would be able to see Yue when they would capture them. That was his belief that Yue would take over the city. And of course, eventually this did happen, and King Gojin, I believe several years later, did manage to defeat the Wu kingdom, and so the king, according to the story, highly regretted not listening to Wu Zishu. So there are some parallels we can see perhaps between Wu Zishu and Qu Yuan, that these stories are similar, with someone whose advice is not heeded, leading to a suicide, leading towards, again, honorable death for one's state. This is something that's, again, celebrated in a small area of China. And his celebration is not something that's nearly on the level of Qu Yuan. The third person I'd like to mention in the celebrated people around Double Fifth Festival, Dragon Boat Festival, is Cao E. Now, she is celebrated around Zhejiang, especially in Shaoxing, Ningbo, and Jiaoshan. Now, forgive again the typo. So she is a later addition, perhaps, that in the year 143, her father, who was a local shaman, a local wise man, actually fell into the river and was lost during the celebrations. Now, excuse me. Cao E, in an act of showing her love to her father, showing the duty to her father, she actually spent the next 3 days searching for him, refusing to give up. But unfortunately, after the 3 days, the bodies of herself and her father were found. Now, this is celebrated because this highlights the Confucian or the Chinese ideal of filial piety or respect or duty towards one's parents. Now, this act, I don't believe heroism is the correct word, but her act of duty, her showing of responsibility is celebrated. There is a temple for her in Shangyu, the city of Shangyu, and the river Shun was renamed to the river Cao'e in her honor. So again, these people are celebrated for double fifth. They are all part of this wide story around the ideals of traditional Chinese culture in Cao'e's case of filial piety, duty to one's parents. But in the ways of Wu Zishu and Qu Yuan, it is one's duty and love for one's country that overcomes all, and trying to do the best thing for the country, that whilst knowing that it may not be the best thing for yourself. So this is something that I do find very interesting, and I would love to hear from any reaction or ideas from the audience. So please feel free to look into the chat. So these stories, as we've mentioned, can highlight different aspects of traditional Chinese culture, and also what you can look at these stories and see what is promoted today, what we can learn from the way that people understand the stories and appreciate them today. Even if, as someone like myself, when I first heard these stories, I was my mid-20s, so I would have approached these stories with a very different viewpoint, looking at the ideas that perhaps a different approach towards suicide for one's country. That's not something that is necessarily celebrated in Western culture. This is not something that's seen as put forward as an honorable idea. So the idea then, I think, is the reason I ask this, what we can take from them, and the importance of these stories is when we learn a culture, when we want to understand other people, how they think, how they act, why they do what they do, and comes also to look at how we do what we do, how we think what we think, and that ultimately comes from stories. How do we engage with our own culture? We are taught the same stories. Each of us growing up in a certain culture, we generally share the similar stories through our school systems, through our pop culture, through our traditional stories, of whether we're going all the way back to, in the West, things like Aesop fables, whether we're looking at the Grimm's fairy tales. All of these are the ones that shape us and give us a shared touch point or a touchstone of meaning, lessons, culture. So when we look to understand Chinese culture and Chinese people and how Chinese people approach and think towards their country, towards one another, we can understand that through the shared stories. So the putting someone like Qu Yuan and his act of as it can be seen, sacrifice for his country on as a very highly regarded thing, and looking towards one's love for a country as being something that is highly respectful, highly important, we can see how that can be shaped towards the current Chinese people's love for their country, or they're looking at the importance of sacrifice for one's country overall. Of course, you can see the parallels there with Wu Zishu. Hopefully the idea that, doing what's best for one's country, even understanding that this may not be best for oneself. We can also look, again, Cao'e, when we put people or push, I don't necessarily like the word push, but when the stories that are shared showcase and highlight and celebrate one's duty of care and love for the parents, this is something that is reinforced with people. So this shared cultural touchstone is important to how people behave towards parents, or people's attitude towards country is continued today in China. And I think it's always worthwhile re-examining this from our own points, for our own cultural viewpoints, but also looking outside the stories that we tell ourselves, that we are told, to try to understand not just Chinese culture, but any culture, and I would always be very interested to hear other cultural ideas and stories. So if there are any questions about this, please put them into the chat. Otherwise, we will move on from 无字书, Chuyuan, and Caoe. So the next stage then is, if we've looked at how some of the background, some of the context of the history of Dragon Boat Festival, we can start to look at the traditions of Dragon Boat Festival. And of course, as we can imagine, the very first and central, most popular aspect of Dragon Boat Festival are the dragon boat races. I'm sure many of you have seen these on television. They are celebrated around the world. They're massively energetic, they're loud, they're highly competitive. And the Confucius Institute, we will be helping celebrate these in September around Warwick. And hopefully there is also in September a Dragon Boat Festival in Stratford that we would love to be involved with. So obviously these are taking place in September due to COVID restrictions, etc. So what is a dragon boat? As we can see from these pictures, and let's go back up to this bigger picture, this is a long, narrow boat with teams of they're not rowers, they're paddlers, and with a drummer at the front who would be the leader, who will be keeping the pace, and there is someone on the rudder at the back. There are many ways that we can look at this tradition and try to think about why this is coming through and why this is something that has maintained its popularity. I believe, first of all, the main reason this has come through today is because it's fun. It's exciting. It's something that people enjoy watching, taking part in, and it's something that local groups can be brought together to enjoy. And I think that's perhaps the main reason it becomes popular. But it can also be traced back to, as we mentioned with Chu Yuan, when he drowned in the river, the locals raced out in their boats to try to rescue him. This is the link from the original story to the Dragon Boat Festivals today. There are also, excuse me, there are also ideas of working together in the Dragon Boat races, because of course, when the original ideas of patriotism, of communal activity, of working together, these are something that are vital for winning or doing well in a dragon boat race. So we can look at this from the perhaps academic idea of looking and trying to find the deeper meaning of teamwork, of striving for common goals, which are part of the Confucian ideal of the communal groups. Or we can look into this and say, why are these now popular around the world? It's mostly because they're exciting. It's fun. Any sort of race will be popular, and for people to jump in to do a physical challenge like this, it's satisfying. It builds a teamwork. It's people struggling for a common goal. It's enjoyable, whether you are appreciating the history, the stories, or whether it's just getting into a river and having fun with your friends. I think it's fantastic. Has anyone taken part in a dragon boat race? I would love to hear if you have. I am trying to encourage the people at my gym to join one of them, and we would love to. It's something that I've always enjoyed, being on the water, and I'd really like to take part. So the dragon boat racing, that's the key. That's the big ticket item, I think, for the festival. Although it is not the main, or not the only, excuse me, it's certainly the main tradition, but it's not the only tradition. The next one is, of course, food. If you've had an awareness of Chinese festivals, or various Chinese festivals, we will see that the common thread across almost all Chinese festivals is that there are specific foods. Food is massively, massively important. It is a central part of Chinese culture, no matter where you go. Every area in China is very, very proud of their local food. I know that myself, I spent a lot of time in Shanxi province, a city called Taiyuan, and they are very proud of their noodles and their vinegar, mian he cu. I also spent several years in Chongqing, and if you mention Chongqing, everybody will immediately start to talk about the hot pot, as well as the hot weather. So the spicy hot pot for Chongqing, the noodles of Shanxi, and there will be arguments about all of this. There's other foods, of course, have many different meanings. There are different foods to eat at different times. And the food for Dragon Boat Festival, the main food for Dragon Boat Festival is, of course, zongzi. Zongzi, these are basically they're dumplings of sticky or gelatinous rice wrapped in bamboo leaves. So this would mean something that's perhaps that would have been eaten in the southern states, somewhere around the Milua River. So these are very old dumplings that are still made today, and the sticky rice or sticky rice, gelatinous rice would have a variety of fillings. So there could be some sweet ones using red bean or jujubes. There could be some meaty ones with pork belly, or some more things with walnut, pine nut kernels. Really, anything that you could think you could put in, you would have that in a dumpling. And these dumplings, the sticky rice, would have the central filling with the sticky rice around it, and would then be wrapped in a bamboo leaf. Now, they're then steamed or boiled, and it's a massively popular food around the Dragon Boat Festival time. So you will, when you're in China, you will see these being sold on the streets from street vendors. You will see them in supermarkets, and people will make them at home. So I've made them myself. Yeah, thank you, Javad. You have a food similar, but we wrapped it in something else leaves, Mike. Again, thank you. I'm afraid I don't recognize those characters. I'm so much when I say my knowledge of Chinese, it doesn't extend too much to the reading. I've been neglecting my classes, unfortunately. So zongzi is a hugely popular food. You can have many you can have many flavors, many places to get them, and it is widely loved. For another chat, excuse me, let me just try to open this. So from grape leaves, thank you. Oh yes, putao leaves. Yeah, I'm going to get told off for not knowing this one. So I do know putao. So the next thing we look at, so the food, people will have dragon boat races, and they will eat zongzi. It's actually different north and south. Oh, thank you. I always love, as I've said, having people correct and add to this. So zongzi are different in north and south of China. Well, thank you, Shaolin. The south likes to add beans and meat. The north is eaten directly with sugar. Oh yes, thank you. Yes, I did. I have had those. Yes, with a bowl of a plate of sugar to put in. It's very, very sweet when we do this one. Thank you for clarifying that, Shaolin. I appreciate it. You know, it's good to have this certain knowledge. It's very worth understanding that, again, as I've mentioned, across China, there are very many differences between the styles of foods and the way that people will celebrate and eat. This was also something we mentioned looking at Chinese New Year, where the North and the South will have a different approach, where the northern China would have dumplings, whereas the southern China would have a more sweet, the sweet balls. So I always love to have extra comments to help. So when we're looking at the next thing is the spice bags. Now, when we look at Dragon Boat Festival and currently the most popular story and background for Dragon Boat Festival is, of course, the story of Chu Yuan and his sacrifice, which leading towards the Dragon Boat races and the Zongzi. There is another look at the double fifth, which some would say goes further back, is perhaps more original, where the double fifth festival was a time almost in some ways perhaps analogous to a Halloween, where it's seen as a very unlucky day or a very unlucky time where maybe this would be the time when people would succumb to diseases or there would be bad harvests, and this would be attributed to spirits, to bad ghosts, to poor luck. Now, to help stave this off, to help keep the spirits, the bad spirits and the bad luck away, many people like to carry bags of spices, as we can see in this picture. And of course, like anything like this, there would be a huge variety of these bags, and they're often made from silk, fine satin or cotton, and very often including five different colors. And while this bag is in a simple shape, we can also find some of these bags are fashioned into complex shapes of different animals or Chinese characters, which would represent different aspects of luck, or perhaps the zodiac, or whichever area you are. And you can, again, these spice bags you would be able to buy anywhere. Some of them would be very, very simple. Some of them would be highly ornate and quite expensive. And the herbs and spices inside, these would be based on traditional Chinese medicine. And if anyone if you have any experience with Chinese traditional medicine, one of the largest takeaways that you will have from that, not about the efficacy of the medicine itself, but the single major takeaway, even visiting a traditional Chinese medicine, will be the smell. The smell is very powerful, and very much that's part of the medicine. If when my family members have had a lot of Chinese medicine, the whole house is aware. It's a very, very powerful smell. So these spice bags tie back into an even older, perhaps more traditional approach to Duan Yu, or the double fifth festival, surrounding luck, surrounding poor fortune, and trying to keep that off. And that idea leads into perhaps the final story for today is our final tradition, as well as the story, is looking at Zhong Kui, who is the king of ghosts. Now, one of the other traditions that people in some parts of China will do is to hang up pictures of Zhong Kui to help scare the ghosts, to help keep the ghosts under control. And this leads to an interesting story that I do enjoy, the story of Zhong Kui, and I will finish by sharing this, even though this is not necessarily directly related to Dragon Boat Festival. So Zhong Kui, I'll come back to this one to say. Now, the story of Zhong Kui, he was a highly intelligent young man who, well, I'll put this back up, who committed suicide after his top score in the imperial exams was thrown out due to his disfigured appearance. Now, to help expand on this a little bit more, in ancient China, the imperial exams were hugely important. This was the way for people to advance themselves, for people across the country to achieve official positions. And the higher your score, the higher the official position. So people from poorer or less affluent families, this would be an opportunity for their children to advance. So it's a hugely, hugely important festival. Now, according to the story of Zhong Kui, he achieved one of the highest scores, perhaps the highest score in the imperial exam of his day. However, according to the story, due to his disfigured and ugly appearance, his score, or his examination, was thrown out. So he was not admitted through the exams. He was not able to achieve an imperial or an official position, which led to him committing suicide by rushing against the imperial city gates repeatedly until he broke his head. That was the story. Again, we can perhaps see this common thread again coming back to our original stories of looking at Xu Yuan and Wu Zixi of suicide being hugely relevant and integral to some of these stories. Now, upon his death, the king of hell, or Yama, saw his potential and appointed him king of ghosts and gave him the duties of maintaining discipline and controlling the ghosts who would go back to our plane of existence, I imagine, and causing trouble. So this leads back, why pictures of Zhong Kui? Why is he this crazy appearance? And you can see from the picture on the screen, this rather frightening chap. He's a highly intelligent, very civilized, but also very powerful figure who many people will use to scare off the bad spirits and the ghosts. So that is the end of my presentation about Dragon Boat Festival. Some of the takeaways I think we would have from this, of course, Xu Yuan perhaps would be the main one to look at if you are interested in discussing and looking further about Dragon Boat Festival. Xu Yuan is the currently most popular and is the central figure in how Dragon Boat Festival is celebrated today. Wu Zixi and Cao are other lesser known or lesser celebrated figures. And of course, how it's celebrated today is we're focusing on the dragon boat races, the zongzi, spice bags, and the pictures of the King of Ghosts. So as we've finished this one, I would love to open up the chat to any questions that people or comments that people would have. So I'm going to type in here any questions or comments into the chat that people would like to either add or share other knowledge of something that maybe I have not included in the presentation today, or whether there are areas that you would like to know more about that I might be able to add. So please feel free to, please drop some questions into the chat. I think are these stories the reason the festival celebrates today in countries under Chinese leadership, such as Hong Kong? Excellent question. I think these are the stories today basically, yes, these are promoted, the stories of patriotism, looking forward to our country. This would be the key reasons that the mainland Chinese leadership is highly supportive of this. This is a lesson that is taught through Chinese schools. However, this is not simply something that's pushed for Chinese mainland. It's worth mentioning that other Southeastern Asian countries, particularly Korea, all have very similar celebrations, and so this long history of tradition is something that is not simply pushed by Chinese leadership. This is something that people would be doing anyway. I think as I said, the stories, these traditional stories, are very appealing towards Chinese leadership, promoting patriotism, and I don't want to comment on whether that's a positive, negative. This is something that every country does. We love to promote the stories that show our countries in the best light. Oh, what good movies to know more about Chinese culture? That's a very interesting question. There are so many. Javid, that's a great question. I think when I come to movies and TV shows about Chinese culture, it's always good to look at some of the four I always go back for the touchstones of the four great novels. So when we look at movies around the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there is one called Red Cliff, which is about the Journey of Three Kingdoms. There are many movies and TV shows about Dream of Red Mansions, which are fantastic. And there are also, no doubt, many stories about Journey to the West, Shioji. There's Monkey King stories. There's a few of those on Netflix, actually, which are really good. Also, if you look at some movies by, I believe, some of the earlier Zhao Zimu movies like Hero and, the names elude me, but have a look. There are quite a lot. And if anyone has other suggestions for good movies to know more about Chinese culture, please throw them into the chat. We have a question. When was the imperial exam last taken? Ilhan, that's a fantastic question, and I would have to ask Google. I'm not entirely sure. This was something that's outside my area of expertise. I think it's obviously this certainly would not have lasted after the fall of the empire, after the rise early last century of the civil wars and the revolutions in China. Although it is arguable that the imperial exams have, or the spirit of the imperial exams in a way has continued with what's called the Gaokao, or the university entrance exams today, which are a 4-day exams for 18-year-old students wishing to proceed to university. Those are seen as the almost make or break exams for the life of Chinese young students. So many students who don't achieve the scores they wish, unfortunately see themselves as failures, and they see that as a sort of a huge barrier towards or huge ceiling on their future success. So imperial exams certainly wouldn't have in their old state would have developed and would have changed. I can't give you an answer to when it last happened, but the spirit of those exams, the idea of this single exam having a huge effect on your future, that's something that's still around today with the university entrance exam, or Gaokao. So that's a great question, Ilhan. Thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone for asking questions. It's a huge topic of, as I say, if there's final thoughts for culture, for the Dragon Boat Festival, I would suggest, again, have a look around. There's so much information online. If you are engaged with our Chinese classes, please talk to your teachers. They will have many opinions and many experiences they are willing to share with you. And if you are interested in engaging with us or our classes or events, I will go back to suggesting that you please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Confucius Cov Uni, or email us at confuciusinstitute@coventry.ac.uk. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating today. I'm very appreciative of your questions, and well, please follow us to find when we will have our next Chinese Corner. So 谢谢大家，再见，bye bye. Thank you very much. Thank you for your very kind comments, Ikram, and thank you, Shadida. And apologies if I've said your name incorrectly. And thank you, Javad. Thank you for that one. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.